Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us, joining our webinar today on restoring old or damaged photos with PaintShop Pro. I'm Melanie, the Product Marketing Manager of PaintShop Pro, and I'm here with Carole today, who's one of our PaintShop professionals and who's conducted a number of PaintShop Pro webinars for us over the past year. Carole's going to show you how to use PaintShop Pro to fix old damaged photos using pictures submitted by some of you guys. We did receive a lot of images, however, so she can't show them all in this, it's going to be about 45-minute demo. But the good news is you're going to learn how to restore your own photos after attending this webinar. We're going to be recording the webinar and we will post it to our YouTube channel as well as to our Corel Discovery Center. So the link is learn.corel.com/webinars. I will send the link out to a follow-up email that you should receive tomorrow. So you'll have a link to that recording. But I just want to stress, I do get a ton of emails from webinar attendees looking, or webinar registrants, I should say, who maybe missed the webinar because they've got something else going on, or webinar attendees who do want to watch afterwards, watch the recording, asking where they are. So you will always find at learn.corel.com/webinars all of the PaintShop Pro webinars we run. We keep an archive of them there, and we will always post them there a day or two after the webinar has taken place. You will find today's webinar recording available on learn.corel.com/webinars on Monday. Also, I want to talk about the great offers that we have for you as a thank you for attending the webinar. So we're offering 40% off PaintShop Pro 2018 and PaintShop Pro 2018 Ultimate, as well as 50% off any one item in the PaintShop Pro 2018 Welcome tab. This excludes third-party applications, however. And Carole's put together an offer of her own for you too. She has a Let's Fix It class on restoring damaged photos, which she's offering to you free. This is a $20 value normally, and includes a full-length video and a comprehensive 52-page illustrated guidebook that you can refer to. So all of the details of her class and the offers that Corel has for you will be sent out in a follow-up email tomorrow with all the details on how to redeem the offers. That's all I've got to say, so I'm going to let Carole take it from here and get started. Please enjoy the webinar, or I hope you enjoy the webinar. Go ahead, Carole.
Hi. Before we actually start on the process of restoring photos, I'd like to point out a couple of information about scanning photos, because obviously if you have old photos, they are typically printed. So if you want to restore them with PaintShop, you need to digitize them, so you need to scan them. So whenever you need to scan a photo, it is important to try to scan with a high resolution. I think some scanners are by default set at 200 pixels per inch, but if you can scan with a higher resolution, you will get more pixels and more details that you can work on to fix whatever damage there are. If you scan at a very low resolution, you might end up with just a very small image, and it's much harder to get a better result. In addition, when you scan a picture, even though it's a black and white picture, it's important to scan in color. And this will also give you more flexibility when you do the restoration. So this is important. And if you are really, really stuck and you have to use a camera to photograph a photo instead of scanning, well, then you will need also to do some perspective correction, and we will see that in the presentation. So as Melanie mentioned, we got a lot of pictures submitted for possibly using during this webinar. And of course, we can't present 100 of them in less than an hour. So I did pick a few that will be good examples to illustrate some use of the tools, a variety of tools, and then you can probably apply the same process to your own photos. So I will start with this photo that was submitted by Warren. And as you can see, most of the damage is those creases. And we have in PaintShop a tool called the Scratch Remover. You might not see it because it might be hidden under the clone brush, but it is here. The Scratch Remover will, I'll just make an example here. I'll make it really large so you can just see, and we'll undo. It will create a rectangle, like a main rectangle in the center, and two thin rectangles on each side. The center part will be filled by kind of an average of what is in the outside rectangles. So that knowing how it works, it will help you decide on the size and the placement of this tool whenever you want to use it. The size will depend obviously on the size of your picture and the size of the scratch and also the details around. So the first thing that we have to do when you want to do restoration is obviously make a copy, a duplicate of your image. So I use the Shift D shortcut to have a duplicate. I don't want to work on the original, especially if I happen to have an autosave set, because I don't want to lose my work, but then it might overwrite my original photo. So what I'll start with, the size, in this case, the size was a bit big, so I'll go with 50 pixels. And the easiest part to use the Scratch Remover is when you have kind of a busy background that doesn't really have any recognizable pattern. So it's very easy to go and you simply cover the scratch and it will replace the center part by what's on the side. You can go very long, you can go in small parts. Sometimes it's better to go in small sections because you have a bit more control. But I'll just go a little fast here. Notice how when you do, I'll just undo this. When I say that the center part will become an average of the outside rectangles, it will tend to create that how would you call it? Kind of a line, because it will pull the side colors inward. So you might get some kind of a line. Sometimes it doesn't really make much difference, but in some locations, especially if you have something with a very specific pattern, then it will be very obvious. So I'll just keep just covering, and then you can go around, especially if you have an area like here, which is really doesn't have any too important details. So it might not show too much in the end. You sometimes have to do it more than once. And one really important detail also is that if you create this, or you cover a scratch that is at an angle, you can see that sometimes it will take the colors from one area and the other and blend them. So it is a good idea to try to put the Scratch Remover perpendicular to a visible edge. So that way it will go and blend very well. Because sometimes if you go at an angle, I guess this one didn't do it, but you will get a bit of the light color, for example, that will go inside the other area. And when it's pretty similar in colors, it doesn't matter. But let's see how it does. Here I'm going to try to go and see how the top and the bottom of my rectangle kind of blended very well. Very well. See, the arm is vertical, so the scratch will hide very well also. It's almost like magic. Okay, here is a good example of how the scratch remover blends sometimes in the wrong way, especially if I have a little bit of an angle. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes if I go with a larger area. So you have to play around and, okay, see how here it grabs some of the light color, brought it down. So if I don't want that, I just try to be careful, or later I'll use a smaller brush. Okay, here how it's twisted. So I'll try to go from the edge to another edge. And I can do the same in the shirt here. And the troublesome places will be likely around the face. So this area here can do pretty quickly, but when you get to the face, you can't, oops, you cannot use exactly the same. For example, if I do this, well, that's really not what I want. So at that point, I will really reduce and go very little at a time. You have to zoom in often, and I'll go with the lips, the mouth. See, a little bit at a time will hide or will blend a bit more. And under the nose, it will be probably kind of not too bad. And you can see how the eyebrow, I'll try to grab some colors from the two other sides, and that kind of worked. So inside the eye, that will be hard. Oh, if you get the right angle, you're good. See, the nose will probably be another challenge. I go smaller, trying to get the colors from the edges. It's not perfect unless you want to really paint. You can draw yourself also, but sometimes it's kind of a create an average. And I'll go back maybe to 30 here. Try to get this. And if it's not working too smoothly, you can also use after that maybe the clone brush to try to clone around. So the clone brush is here. It's taking a while. Okay. Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, here. So the clone brush, you have the size, and well, this is obviously too big. I can clone like maybe 20 pixels. That's even big. Go 10. I like the hardness not to be too hard because I want soft edges. So I might want to clone maybe in the hair. I right click to my source and I'll dab a bit here. I'll take the source on the forehead and try to draw a bit forehead. It's not the best here because it has a high opacity. I can undo this and go a little softer on the edge. Same thing, like for the nose, I could probably try to draw a little bit, but you can, as you can see, at least when you zoom out, you can now compare this photo to this one, and you can already see an improvement. I'm not going to go through all the scratches because it will take longer, and you kind of get the idea of already of how to do it. Let me just close that. Okay, so this was one photo that could be fixed mostly with the scratch remover. Now we'll go with this photo, nice photo submitted by Robert. Again, I will duplicate this photo. And since there are lots of little scratches and dots and dust and everything, there you don't really want to go ahead and remove them all one by one. So there is a setting under Adjust, Digital Noise Removal. And you can see how some of the dust will be removed. Basically, it will add a slight blur. So it will blur out the white specks around, and you can adjust how much you want the correction. You can go higher, so you will get more of a blur, but again, at the same time, you get all those scratches and those artifacts to go. So let's say that we have something like this that we kind of like. It has a bit of a blur, but now I will remove the biggest specks that were left, and I'm going to be using the makeover tool. So depending on how you set up, sometimes you will see this icon, sometimes it will be another one. And although it's a makeover tool, you have the blemish fixer. We can definitely use that for other than the blemishes. And the blemish fixer will work similar to the scratch remover. If we zoom in, you can see how the tool has a center, an inner circle and an outer circle. So the area that will be fixed will be the inner circle, and it will use a blend of whatever pixels and colors are in the outer circle. So if I cover the white dot here, it disappears. So the size will depend on the size of the spots you want to remove and the size of your picture, obviously. But just like the scratch remover, if you are to go close to an edge with a contrasting color, it might not do a good job. So for example, if I go here, well, not so bad. But occasionally it will not be removing only what you want. So here, as you can see, I got a little black that was added, see, as opposed to what I would like. So in this case, I would probably wait until I have a smaller size and can remove. Again, this one added a dark spot that I don't want. I will reduce it now to get my smaller spots without too much distortion. Of course, I don't want necessarily to go over all the little specks, but I'll do what is important. And I can also use it several times for something that might be a little bit larger than that inner circle. And in this case, we do have also a little scratch that is obviously not part of the shirt. So again, I can use here that scratch remover, and I'll go slowly, section by section, and try to go against those folds so they kind of blend in very well. And I can get something like this. I'm gonna get one here. So it is already better. Of course, it lost some of the sharpness. I can probably re-add some sharpness here with the unsharp mask and play around with the settings. So the radius here, if I was to go very high, so you can see an obvious difference. You can see how the contrast is increased, maybe too much, obviously, but I might want to go to this a bit. If I was to increase the clipping, that would add more blur. So I don't want blur because I wanted some sharpness, and I can use this. Excuse me. But of course, if you increase the sharpness, then you can see those specks a bit more. So you can have to go back and forth a little bit. You know, do I want more sharpness and then more specks that I need to remove? Or do I want to keep it a little smoother, a little more blurred, with a softer look and fewer specks? So those are the decisions that you have to make. And same thing also is, are you going to want to fix all the little specks everywhere or only on your important subject? And even if you have maybe to crop the photo to remove some of the other artifacts. So that is one other tool that you can use. And occasionally you might just need just a few runs or a few tools, and that's it. So that's it for Robert's photo. Now Ralph has a really bad faded photo and actually damaged. So again, we will be duplicating this, and this is obviously too big for the scratch remover and obviously too big also for the blemish remover. So in this case, we are going to be using a typical tool that we have in PaintShop since a few versions, and we are just going to select the area that needs to be fixed and choose the magic fill. And now it is gone. Look at that. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Try not to go too far, because especially if you have a selection that is close to a particular shape or element, sometimes the magic fill will go and grab it. Sometimes you can be lucky. Like this time, it's pretty good, I find. And we have another hole here. Repeat that magic fill. And there. So we can repeat the same thing, and we can make more than one selection. So by holding the Shift key, I can select more areas. Probably could have, I forgot this one, but I can do it in second run. And that's getting pretty good. Now let's do this one. And there. So if we have more that we want to fix, or if sometimes we fixed it, but we don't like the complete result, we can redo it, and PaintShop will take maybe another area to fill it in, and it's already better. So we'd still have some details. We can use the blemish remover. In this case, this photo is a little bit bigger, so I can remove this. And this one now. And on the forehead, well, if you look closely, you have to decide whether is this a damage to the photo or is it a bump on the forehead. Let's say that I don't like that, so I'll remove it. You can use the blemish remover. And the details here I can probably fix with the scratch remover again. I'll go a little bit bigger. And I can probably even go more than that, but I can use then the clone tool. Let's go with 50. Whoops, not 500. Definitely not. And I can fill in the hair here. And I can just brush on, get another source to hide those little defects. Let's go in the head here, and I'm going to finish off and try to remove a little bit of that brownish. There, it's already better. But notice how the colors are really not that great. And I think I'm going to clone here too. Okay. So that is already better, don't you find? No more holes. But I can also now adjust the color, and I will use something that I tend to like, which is the levels. And if you want to have it non-destructive, you can create a layer, which is an adjustment layer with levels, in which case you can change your mind. And I like to bring this here. It's much better. And well, this bluish color, I'll take care of it by turning my photo into a black and white. So I'll just activate this layer, go to saturation, colorize, and saturation down to 0. So whatever color doesn't matter. And you can then, using the levels, you can double click and it will reopen. You can readjust if you want. Whoops. And you can go where to the level you feel would be good for your photo. We do have an uneven frame, so we can keep it like this and keep it as like it's typical, or you can, using the selection tool, you can select the photo, select inward, invert, Control-Shift-I, and I could add just a new raster layer for this because I don't want to have it necessarily affected by the levels. And I will flood fill with black. Now I have a new photo that is, I think it is better than what I had initially. No holes. The colors are a little bit more, or not the colors, but the edges and the details are more defined, and I have a more even frame that matches what I had. So this is my third example. Now this photo was a bit more challenging because, let's make a duplicate, because looking at it very closely, it has a texture. And if you just use the clone or the scratch remover or the blemish, it will remove that texture. Of course, you might want to remove it, but let's say that you want to keep that particular texture because this, I'm not sure if it's how it was printed, but it almost looks like it's painted on a textured medium. So how do you keep the texture and remove the paint? The trick here is one really interesting feature of the clone tool. So let's activate our clone brush. And I will go with 200 pixels because this photo is very large. Actually, I can go to 300 very easily. So when I do right click to get my source, notice how the brush itself shows the content that I had. So I can actually see the texture, and that way I can align it to make the where I will clone to make it match. So here I can click and you can see that the texture will remain because it matches the texture itself. So it's not keeping the actual texture that is underneath the paint, but it's copying the texture from another area that is not damaged, that is still intact. So that allows me to remove the paint or the stains by keeping some texture. At this point, I can't use the same source because the source now is in the hair, which is darker. So I will get another source, and again, I will line up and fill in where I can. You can see how using the clone tool, you will tend to have some kind of repeat look, but that's when you will be able to get another source at another place and repeat the process, and always trying to align. The better you align, better your result is. I'm working a little bit fast here. Again, I'll go with a source and my source is going to be, let's say, here. And that's how I can go about removing the paint while keeping the texture. Obviously, it will be a big challenge to try to remove paint in other places. So for example, I can do around the face, but inside the face, unless I get another source inside the face with the same texture and the correct color to clone, this will be really another challenge. It would be very difficult. So I can probably go and remove this part. But for the face itself, it will be much harder to do. And maybe by having all the artifacts or the excess stains and paint, it could work and still focus on the subject and still improve the picture. So just to show, when I did another run of this on the same picture, okay, just a bit long, and here is what happened when I had most of the background stains removed. And so you can see how it's definitely an improvement, I think, for this picture. The ability to line up the source for the clone and the target will be a great asset if you want to align with the edge of a door or something of that nature. Now, this picture submitted by Steve is a completely different challenge because we do have actually a ripped photo, and if you look closely, they don't align. So it's not just a scratch that has to be removed. You actually have to realign the two pieces as if you had them in your hand. So I will again duplicate my photo, and this time I will use my freehand selection tool set to freehand. And what I'm actually, I like to use point to point simply because it gives me a time to rest, so I can go a little bit, just a little bit inside the part that is ripped, because otherwise I'm going to lose the details. So I'm going to be cutting off the left part of this photo. All the way here and here. So in my layers palette, I will right click, promote the selection to a layer. So now I have that half that I just selected, and I will deselect. Now using my move tool, I can try to align it to the best I can. You can use various parts of the photo to try to align. Of course, I can look at the frame if you happen to have a frame. It could be another element. In this case, I have maybe the top of the room. It could be the calendar. See, 1, 2, 3. So I don't want to overlap too much because then I'm going to cut my calendar. The frame here is the line, okay. And that's good. So I could now merge the two together, but just in case I want to move it again, or I don't want to completely merge, I can right click, merge, visible to a new layer. This is one nice feature of recent versions of PaintShop. So you keep your original layers intact, separate, and everything, but now you can work on a merged version. So at this point, basically the easiest part will be to use the scratch remover. And again, I will try to go from one section, from the edge of a section inside to the other one. So I'll do the same thing in the frame. And let's see how it can work on the pants. Pretty good. And those are pretty big, so I'll just follow this. And again, I will try to go completely against the edge that is obvious here. Let's remove this. And, oh, that's pretty good. And I can reduce it now to fix some smaller parts. That could be a little challenge because if I try to correct here, you know, I'm kind of losing a bit. So I will be using possibly my clone tool and very small, maybe 10 pixels. I will align again my source here on the edge of my calendar. Let's zoom in if I can. It's really tiny, so I'm going to be, maybe I'll increase the opacity in this case. And I can kind of redraw the edge of the calendar. It's not the best because I won't be getting the numbers, of course, but it's already better. And let's go back to the scratch remover. Oops, that's too big. Here. And can we do something like this for that? Pretty hard. But again, we alternate. As you can see, we have an area of tools and we can use different tools at different time. I'm going to be cloning here, trying to remove this. And maybe this part kind of looks like, whoops, taking this source, maybe I can try to fabricate an edge here. Try to remove this part. And so on. So that's really little details, and with more time and you can get a better result. So let's say that I'm happy. I still have here, I would have in the desk that I would want to fix, but it's already much better than it was before. One thing I noticed also is that to me that photo is slightly crooked. So I will use here the perspective correction tool. Typically, you might see the straighten tool, but the perspective correction is underneath. And for this tool, you will place the corner handles on the known corners of your photo. And accept. And now your photo is aligned correctly. In this case, I still have that frame that is kind of missing parts, especially where there was the rip and the rounded corners. So what I'll do is I'm going to clone again. I'm going to clone. And I'm going to use a larger one. So I'm going to clone the inside of the frame on the outside everywhere. Something like this. I'm going to use a different source to go downward. As you can see, it's kind of just a pattern or a textured design, so you don't have to worry about aligning much. and it's here. But since I want to get back those rounded corners, I will select all my photo. So I go with selection, select all. I'm not sure, I don't see the marching ants. And I will go to modify, contract, and go to about 150 and go back to modify, expand, and I'll go to 100. That's the maximum available. The expand selection is always a command that takes a while. And since I only was able to expand by 100, I will modify and expand again, this time by 40. See, I contracted by 150, so now I will expand by 140. This is a slow command, always been. And then I'll invert my selection with Control-Shift-I and hit the delete key. And of course, I'll see my bottom layer, so I'm just gonna hide them. And now I have a new, better aligned photo, and I still have my rounded corners. Okay, so this was the fifth one. I do have more photos, but I think we would run out of time. What do you think of that, Melanie?
Yeah, we've got 12 minutes left. We've got some photos we can, or sorry, some questions that we can take now, but if you had one that would take, I don't know, under 5 minutes, you could show it. If you think it would take longer than that, then maybe we should save it for another time.
And no, probably the other ones I was getting some even more damaged photos, so they probably would take longer.
Okay, well then we can go straight to questions then if you're done.
Sure.
Great. Okay. Now these questions came in at different times, so you might have to think back to what photo you were working on.
Okay.
Uh, all right. So one question is, can you apply digital noise remover to a selected area to avoid, for example, softening the person?
Yes, you can do that. Because whenever you apply an effect, it will be applied to any area that is selected. So if you don't have any selection, it will apply to the whole layer, not the whole picture, the whole layer, especially if you have extracted maybe an element on a separate layer. So yes, that could be done.
Okay, so using the selection tool, you would do that.
Yes.
Perfect. Can you show how to find the blemish feature again?
Sure. It is here. There's the makeover tool. Sometimes you might have red eye as the icon. So this is the blemish remover, and you have 5 tools. You have the blemish fixer, the toothbrush, that's for whitening the teeth, the eye drop to shine the eyes, suntan, and thinify if you want to lose weight. The blemish fixer is the tool that we use often in restoring photos.
Okay. Now, somebody asked, are you holding down the right click and dragging that pattern? I don't know exactly at what time that was.
Yes, I think I know. That would be for Sherry's when we had the texture. No, I don't need to hold anything because when I'll just reopen that picture, because it is true that no, you cannot see what I hold and what I press on my keyboard. So I'm pretty sure it was for this. So when I have no, not this one, it would be the clone. So I have at this point, when I click here for the source, I will right click. So that makes an X and you can see where it shows my source. When I go somewhere else, I can just rub and I'm not holding any key. This is just the tool itself. It will keep using the source for as long. I can lift my cursor. I can do that, change location. It really doesn't matter. I don't have to hold anything. So based on the question, I think it would be related to this particular use of the clone tool.
Perfect. Okay, and then on the last photo you showed, how did you align?
Just by moving. So I have my pieces here, just using my move tool, activating that piece, and I just moved it and go like this. And if I want to be more precise, I could use my keyboard arrows. So going back, down, one pixel at a time, or left or right. This is the very simple tool to manipulate a part. I was lucky in this example that the piece was not rotated, because it would have been a different challenge if, for example, the pieces had been something like that.
Right.
So that would have needed really more careful rotation to try to align the line. But in this case, it was not a problem because it was just moved. It was just offset, not rotated.
Okay, so really you're just eyeballing it to make it line up.
Yeah, and I was really lucky also to have something to line it up. The frame here, the edge of the wall. There was also the calendar that was a part, etc.
Okay. And regarding that same photo, would it make any difference, or would it be better to scan the two halves separately?
Honestly, I think it would be harder because it's harder to get. Well, the thing is that it depends. If the two pieces were actual separate pieces, um, it just depends. In this case, my suspicion is that somebody lined it up already fairly well. But if you are to scan two pictures, it might be hard to get exactly the right angle, in which case then you will also have to do the rotation to line up, maybe the horizontal line here and the other one is at 1 degree angle. I think the best thing would be do both. So you'll see which one seems to be easier to manipulate and which tool will be giving the best result.
Okay. And what was the command to duplicate a photo?
Shift D. You can have it also under Windows here, duplicate, or Shift D.
Okay. Can you enhance a color photo to get the original color back for badly faded photographs?
Yes, you can. I was not going to look into the colors, but let me see. I do have one to give an example. Which one was it? Here. Lorraine sent one picture. And as you can see, it's pretty faded. I'll duplicate it so you can really see the difference. And there is under Adjust, Color, Fade Correction. And even though you have settings that you can play with, you can see that already even the default, which is 45, even the default will give a really improved color on a faded photo. So this is the little magic button for faded photos. That's a good start.
Great. Somebody's asking, how do you display multiple windows in your workspace? There's,
Okay.
they've got
Yeah,
tabs across theirs right now.
that's a default. By default, when you start with PaintShop, the tab document here is checked, and you have all those tabs here. You go to Windows and you just uncheck this, and now they will all be visible side by side, and you can cascade them at first to just be able to grab them and adjust. And once you have this set, it will stay like that for the next time you use PaintShop.
Thanks.
So much
Um,
easier when you want to compare your photos, obviously.
for sure. How do you adjust the width of the scratch remover on the fly opposed to adjusting the width the way that you do?
Um, yeah, I think you can do it. I tend to not do it. No, that's the scratch remover. Um, I think you can. Actually, I don't know. I thought I could do it by holding a key. Can I do it?
Okay.
Not sure.
Well,
I can
I
look
can take
into
a look
it.
to that. And yeah, perfect. And do you use a graphics tablet?
Yes, I am.
You are using one. Okay,
Yes. I have an old bamboo fun Wacom, like really like 10 years.
great. Because there was a couple questions about that, whether you could use a graphics tablet to do this kind of work. So,
Yeah. I find it's easier simply because it's more of a natural way to hold your tool. And so it's just like if you were using a pencil or a pen or a brush as opposed to holding a mouse.
okay. Somebody's saying the clone tool, their clone tool is not copying what is cloned. They're getting weird lines. What are they doing wrong?
Right. Okay. So this is something I also noticed is that if you are using a photo that is grayscale, you will get that. Um, if let's say I'm just going to take, okay, this image is, let's say that I change this one to grayscale, okay, and I try to use the clone. Let's just enlarge it so you can see. If I make a source and I get lines like this, you can see, and that's probably what happens to this person.
Okay.
Okay, now can't seem to I did something bad, something accidental. Okay, so in this case, for example, I will undo this and I go to image, increase color depth and RGB 16-bit channel, and now those artifacts are gone. So this is, and that's why I was saying at the beginning that when you are resizing a picture, no, that when you are scanning a picture, it's important to scan it not in grayscale or black and white, but to scan it in color.
Okay. Are you using 32-bit or 64-bit PaintShop Pro?
In this example, today I'm using 32-bit.
Okay. It's one
Either
now.
one would do the same thing.
Okay, good to know. There's still a lot of other questions that unfortunately we're not going to get to answering in this session, as it is one. So thank you so much, Carol, for your time today. I think a lot of great feedback coming through from people typing to me in the questions here. Um, just a reminder for everybody that the webinar has been recorded. We'll have that recording available Monday. I'll send you a link to where you can find it tomorrow in the follow-up email. I'm also going to be sending links to the 40% discount on PaintShop Pro and PaintShop Pro Ultimate, the 50% off one item in the PaintShop Pro 2018 welcome book. And I will send all the details of Carole's offer where you can get her course and her guidebook. Now, a few people were asking whether they could have a written tutorial of this tutorial. Carole, is what's in your guidebook pretty similar content to what you showed today?
It is similar content, it's different pictures, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's most of the tools will be uh, explained and demonstrated in the guidebook too.
Okay, so for those of you who are interested in a written tutorial, make sure you do check out what Carole's offer is, and that you might find that very helpful as you go to restore your old and damaged photos. I think that is it for me for today. So thank you guys. Thank you to everybody for attending. Look forward to an email from me shortly, and we hope to see you next time. Thanks, Carole.
Thanks.